want to start at the top here with the AFC leader, the Kansas City Chiefs. I want to start with Joe Thuney playing left tackle. Like super, super fun to see that, where you have a bunch of injuries at that left tackle spot. Feels like the entire season they've just had issues at times with some of the ways that defenses are attacking that offensive line unit on the edge, as opposed to at that really, really strong interior. And sometimes you think, oh, do you want to move an interior guy to the outside? When one, that is a very, very hard thing to do. Like there are times, not necessarily with Thuney, but where a player is at that guard spot because they can't do some of those things at tackle, whether it's just like reaching with your literally like your arm length or kind of kicking back, and how you can deal with just an edge rusher moves overall. So really, really impressive to see that. And then it also feels like Kansas City was pretty game plan specific, and we're going to have quick throws against a Houston defensive line that can really, really get after us. So those things combined really nice. Of course, we have Hollywood Brown making his debut in that game as well. What do you have overall for that Chiefs win over the Texans?
Yeah, this was just more continuation of the Chiefs being really good on late downs. We saw that in this game where there were so many third and fourth downs, they were able to convert. They had a 62% success rate on late downs in this game, which is 92nd percentile. And when I looked back at the how the Chiefs stack up against other teams since 2014, I found out they're actually historically good on late downs right now. They're 56% success rate on late downs, is the second highest of any offense since 2014, only behind the 2021 Chiefs. So we have three Mahomes-led Chiefs offenses that are in the top 10 in success rate on late downs. And I think that we often chalk up a lot of late down performance to variance, especially when it's really far off of your early down performance. But the Chiefs just seem to have this tendency to kick their offense into a different gear on late downs. And we even saw a whole new gear that we didn't know of, of this offense in this game, because of the last stuff that you talked about, where you move Joe Thuney. It's clear that Mahomes feels a little bit more comfortable in the structure of the offense now that he can trust one of his tackles. And then the emergence of Hollywood Brown in this offense was really big for just what they wanted to do in general. Xavier Worthy is obviously playing better in the second half of the season than he was in the first half. And then you also had DeAndre Hopkins make some really good catches across the middle of the field in this game, where you had 10 different players that got targets. You could get all the running backs involved, all the receivers, all the tight ends. Like Noah Gray, who I think has been really good this year, like didn't even have to do much in this game. And we know that he can go off no matter what. And Andy Reid's play calling just felt better from what he usually does in the playoffs. Like it felt more like that compared to an early season, regular season game. So I definitely am feeling more optimistic about the Chiefs offense going forward after seeing this performance against the Texans.
I'm so interested to see what they do with Tooney. Are they just going to leave him out there even if everyone's healthy? Like, is it that important where that spot is such a bonus? Of course, you still want to be able to run inside. You can go over center, right guard, just because Kansas City has such a strong interior. When Tooney's at that guard spot, I'm fascinated to see just what it ends up with, because it might actually be best for this team just to leave him out there, which is, again, it's a really inspired move for me, because I just wouldn't, like, that's not the first thing that I would think of. But I guess, when you have that many injuries, when you really have a necessity, you might as well try it, right? And it's kind of fun watching a person who is used to setting the way that a guard sets on that outside. I think it is a little different for defensive ends. Of course, like over time, I think you'd expect a defensive end to be able to figure it out. Like Tooney's an all-pro guard, so like this guy can block. So to watch him on the edge has been pretty fun. I'm glad you mentioned Hollywood Brown and Andy Reid's play calling there as well, because you could look at Hollywood Brown and maybe think, oh, maybe him and Worthy kind of have overlapping skill sets, which, like, yes, they do. But I do think there were a few designs that we saw in this game, whether it's, you have Worthy on like a little bit higher crosser and then Hollywood Brown kind of on a lower crosser working to the same side. So I'm glad you mentioned Reid's play calling overall. It feels like the play calling, the play design, whether Reid feels like, hey, I just have like more kind of weapons overall to be able to use. It feels like that is hitting a groove. I think just over the last few weeks, Kansas City just like fully moving in the right direction. I mean, look, they've one loss on the season, so I don't want to pretend like this is a team that is like struggling in any sort of way. I think that narratively, of course, we look at who's the top team, like what kind of flaws do they have, what kind of ways can other teams sort of attack them. Again, it's going to be that pass rush in terms of is a four-man defensive line going to be able to get after you? But if you're Kansas City and you continue to have really low time to throw games, and like you mentioned, the third down performance it's so fun because I think like making that super unsustainable thing sustainable. Like that is a kind of a
Mhm.
goat thing for Mahomes to be able to do. I really, really love seeing that. And then you just get enough from the defense where even if you're have a just an issue overall about the defense in terms of the cornerback spot, of course, away from McDuffie in terms of health, just in terms of performance a little bit, you still get just this like devious coverage rotation from Spags that he used this against the Dolphins last year where you start in two high, you kind of look like you're closing to one high, and then the safeties flip sides and get back to two high. It ended up as an interception in that wild card game against the Dolphins last season, and ended up as an interception early in the game against the Texans. So it just feels like they have enough pitches to throw at you where you really can't slip up because Houston had they were moving the ball at times. Now the screens they unfortunately did not work a bunch where like the one thing you really don't want to test the Kansas City DBs on is can they tackle a screen because whatever you think of their coverage, those guys can tackle. So that was a little bit tough for Houston. And again, like as I mentioned, Houston was able to move the ball at times, but it's just like one or two things that fall off. Obviously, just a heartbreaking injury for Tank Dell there. And for Houston now, it feels like you're going to win the division. I think it's for them, it feels a little bit more uneven about, hey, are you going to be able to make it out of the first round when you have those injuries piling up, when you have just different things kind of going for your team?
Yeah, I totally agree with a lot of what you said there, where Kansas City was great against screens in this game. They were really able to just get behind the line of scrimmage, close off those tackles. Like that was very impressive to see. I love that safety rotation from Spags, and it really just goes back to like the overarching point of what we just talked about with the Chiefs on both sides of the ball. Where when you're at the level that they're at, where you kind of are going to make the playoffs, probably win the division, at the beginning of each season, like it allows you to just try a lot of this stuff in the regular season, figure out what you're good at, figure out what you're not good at. Like a lot of other teams don't have that luxury just because they're fighting for the playoff spot, fighting for the division throughout the season. So that definitely helped the Chiefs there. And we really did see the defense tighten up. In the second half after the Texans scored their second touchdown, where they forced the three and out after that, held them to a field goal, and then forced another three and out to close out the game there. So just really good from Steve Spagnuolo, from Trent McDuffie, and this entire defense. And I'm going to be still excited to watch them in the playoffs, even if their defense has been a little bit leakier, since the Jalen Watson injury and just general second half, decline.
And the Chiefs go to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers on Christmas Day and then go to Denver to play the Broncos. They only need to win one of those two games to lock up that one seed. So if they beat the Steelers on Christmas, then they don't really have to start anyone against the Broncos, which, that may have implications for the Bengals trying to sneak into the playoffs as well. So that will be a fun one to monitor. Well, let's move on here to that other game that was played on Saturday. The Ravens against the Steelers, where the Ravens they're just after our hearts. I really enjoyed watching them against Pittsburgh because it felt like they were better in the run game against Pittsburgh than that first matchup. They were a little bit more creative whether it's, you spread things out at different times where if Pittsburgh is really, really tough on that interior, try and push a guy out of the box, try and get a guy into space a little bit more, have more creative ways to, draw those linebacker eyes because they can really beat you up front with those for rushers, but to manipulate those linebackers a little bit, get them kind of leaning in the wrong direction. I think that was able to help Baltimore, where early on you had a few things a little bit designed for Lamar Jackson outside of that first game where there was like no designed rushes for him, which I think that was a good idea,
Mhm.
but they didn't have to lean on Lamar in the run game because Derrick Henry had such a good game.
That's exactly what this Ravens offense has been this year, where they don't have to lean on Lamar design rushes. He hasn't been necessarily like super efficient on the design rushes just because of some fumbles, which has hurt his EPA, but also just like having Derrick Henry there has let Lamar like really focus on the pass game, and he has been lethal when dropping back to pass this year. But starting with Derrick Henry, 58% success rate in this game, and it, like you mentioned, like it was just a lot easier for him to run out of these spread out looks, out of 11 personnel, like really just get the Steelers defense spread out so that they can't put seven or eight defenders in the box like they were early or in the first matchup. When the Ravens were getting heavier and trying to put two backs out on the field, and I think that just goes to show like if Todd Monken sees a rematch, he's going to adapt his game plan. I think that's going to be really relevant if the Ravens end up playing the Chiefs or the Bills in the playoffs, where we'll see probably a different type of game plan than he showed in the first game. And so that's something as well that just makes me excited about what this Ravens offense can be. Is Monken has this clear understanding of, even when he plays against a team that maybe he had success against, he still will want to adapt. His game plan and kind of some of the plays he's running going forward.
And for Pittsburgh, we mention all the time with their defense, they run their stuff, but sometimes, you can't just do what you do and you have Lamar Jackson really playing at that high of a level. And then you also have situations where the just cornerbacks, you drop off a little bit, you're able to find openings in the pass game. And I mean, man, Lamar, whenever he's throwing those kind of like deeper outbreakers, is just so beautiful to watch. But for Pittsburgh's offense, felt like they're almost like carried by Russell Wilson just a little bit on some of those plays.
Mhm.
Obviously, that fumble is so huge on that scramble where maybe you could say, oh, Russ, like, can you just run to the right? Instead of taking that on, just a tough situation overall, where Lamar is able to get, or Jesus Christ, I'm just fucking gonna knock that off. I felt bad after calling out Russ on that.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Where was that? Let me stuff. You kind of finished on Lamar there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to talk about the Steelers offense next. Yeah.
Yeah, every time Lamar throws those sort of deeper outbreaking routes, they're just so fun to watch. He's been so accurate on them this year. It feels like outside of just play extension, he is so productive in this offense. Where you look at the Pittsburgh defense, then you're sometimes just kind of running your stuff, and unfortunately, you're not able to kind of cover everyone on the outside the way that Baltimore was attacking them. And then for Pittsburgh's offense, of course, Pickens was out in this game. It sounds like he's going to come back in that big game against the Chiefs on Christmas Day, but fuck, no, this is the pre dude, my bad. I was like, "Oh, are we releasing this after Christmas?" But no, this is the
Oh, no.
I'm falling apart. All right, I'm gonna start it back at 13, 15. Yeah, watching Lamar throw some of those deeper outbreakers, it's just been so fun, really all year. And then when you look at Pittsburgh's defense, it felt like if you're going to keep running your stuff, unfortunately, all the time, you're not going to be able to just deal with some of the different creative looks, particularly in the red zone where they're pulling your eyes a little bit or they're isolating matchups and finding Lamar, having him throw into space. And then we think about Pittsburgh's offense. It felt like, even without George Pickens, you're carried by Russ a little bit, where of course, you have
Mhm.
that fumble on that scramble, the interception. Of course, a rough situation, but how many plays can we make to Calvin Austin on deep plays? I really liked seeing that from Pittsburgh's offense overall. I still think it's just a little bit of kind of tough sledding overall for the Pittsburgh offense.
I agree with a lot of what you said there. Where I actually was pretty impressed by the Steelers' run game in this game. I think that helped them out at times in the game. Not having George Pickens in the pass game, and I think something that is really benefiting Najee Harris and Jalen Warren is they're seeing a little bit of lighter boxes than they have in previous seasons. Where last year Najee Harris saw his average box defenders was 7.1 defenders in the box, per carry, and this year it's gone down to 6.7. If you look on his SumerSports.com data page, so that's like really interesting to me that it's a little bit lighter. The fronts that he's running against, and you're seeing a little bit more explosiveness from both of those running backs. And in the second half in this game, the run game can only take the Steelers offense so far, and so they needed some more juice out of the drop back game. And Russell Wilson only had 3 passes of 20 plus air yards and completed just one of them, which was that amazing catch by Calvin Austin on the sideline. Like, not having George Pickens there just limited how often he wanted to throw deep. And we've talked about this throughout the year that the Steelers offense goes as far as, how many deep balls they end up hitting, just because of what Russell Wilson, is at this point in his career. He only has 7.68 at, which is 37th percentile. And it was just tough. Like when you have as many targets to Van Jefferson and Ben Skoranek and Michael Pruitt, as you had to do in this game, like it's just tough to have a drop back offense. So when Pickens does get back, whether it's this week or next week, I just feel a little bit more or a little bit better about the Steelers offense going forward.
And looking at Baltimore's defense overall, it feels like you have Kyle Hamilton kind of increasing the percentage of snaps that he's just kind of as a locked in safety position where before the season, of course, how much I love the hybrid safety nickel kind of type player, but maybe having him there through some injuries overall, it just helps them kind of streamline things. Like you can get your defense into maybe better looks overall. So I think that's a fun one where it feels like Baltimore, like obviously a real Super Bowl contender, even though right now they're still kind of fighting, hoping for the best to win that division. I just have no desire to run into them in the playoffs. And another team I don't want to run into in the playoffs either is, of course, the Buffalo Bills. Tage, we'll talk a little bit here about the Bills against the Patriots, where I mean, yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Drake May's just beautiful throws in in some tight situations. This is really fun to watch, where you get to watch like Drake or Josh Allen against the player that obviously Patriots fans are hoping turns into Josh Allen in a lot of different ways. So that was a fun one too, certainly to watch. But for Buffalo overall, they like the stuff comes out early on in the day about Allen playing with a broken hand. We've talked all season long just about the different things that Joe Brady getting the 6 offensive linemen. You're able to kind of be a little bit more creative with your offense and find some of those manufactured explosive plays. And then Allen, in the post game, I think he not really that he was like saying it like, oh, we're holding things back, but he had mentioned some sort of balance between we're putting kind of everything on tape versus obviously you have to win games, right? And they're still kind of pushing for that one seed. I do think in this game against the Patriots, you have some situations where I think New England was just kind of happy to play man coverage, where for a Buffalo offense overall, I think there are times when between those guys, I mean, we love Khalil Shakir, right? Of course, we love some of the things that they do there, but I think some defenses are going to feel comfortable dealing with that. And then, of course, if you're able to stop Allen from scrambling, then maybe you overall feel like you're in a good situation. I don't know if you feel like it feels like in the last few weeks, we're just going to bounce back and forth because Lamar and Allen are so tight for that MVP, even though if you look at some of the advanced metrics, maybe they tip in Allen's favor right now, and then you just kind of see where the narrative is at. Was that game enough for you while Lamar Jackson was playing so well against Pittsburgh for you to move off of that?
Yeah, so I mean they're right next to each other in EPA per play. Oh wait, one second. Okay, sorry.
Vacation.
Let me
Is
mark
everything
this
good? You have
here.
to go?
No, no, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, yeah. 18.
I get. Yeah, I
Oh,
got you.
you
Got
marked
you.
it. You marked
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, I'll start at the top. Yeah, so when you look at Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson right now in terms of the MVP race, they are very close to each other in terms of EPA per play. Josh Allen is sitting at 0.32 and Lamar Jackson is sitting at 0.30. And they have very similar usages. Like they are used, a lot in similar offenses. So, I think you lean Allen right now, but it's definitely going to be close here down the stretch. And I thought Kevin Cole pointed out a really good point about, some of the discrepancies between traditional stats like passing yards, passer rating, versus some of the advanced stats like EPA, where when you look at Lamar, he's ahead in a lot of the traditional stats, but EPA Allen is ahead because Allen has had 20 more EPA loss from sacks. This year, Allen has taken virtually no sacks the entire season. Lamar has taken a decent amount more, and then also fumble losses too. Like Lamar has taken or has lost about 12 more EPA fumble losses. So just like overall, like I think Lamar as a passer is having one of the best passing seasons that we've seen of the past couple of years. It's just like some of the other things that Allen does, not taking sacks, not fumbling when rushing as often. That puts him ahead right now. But yeah, I mean, we definitely should talk about Drake May in this game. Like his conversions on third down were phenomenal. Like the offensive line and the receivers like don't allow him to pass deep that often, but when he can get into these situations where he needs like 6-7 yards on third down, he's so good at converting them because of his processing, his ability to extend plays if needed, and give his receivers time to get open. Like I really want the Patriots to just go all in this offseason, get him an offensive line, get him some real receivers in there because I think it'll be a lot more exciting for them.
Look, Drake May, he's not perfect, right? He's not a perfect prospect. He doesn't have everything figured out. It's just so hard to watch them and not be super excited about whatever the heck that it's going to turn into, whatever players that they sort of bring in on the offensive line, whether it's a receiver. They, of course, have an early draft pick. Maybe they end up going defense. Maybe you have Travis Hunter that early. Maybe you end up just playing him at cornerback. I mean, him and Christian Gonzalez together. That's a real fun defensive secondary. But either way, I'm on the same page with you. Let's get him a bunch of help because I think they can really turn things around pretty quick when you have a quarterback that is performing like